All right, here we are. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Captain John. Let's take a ride. We've got Mr. Tyler Trimmer here, and as you see, he's got a slew of bikes behind him, and that's what we're going to talk about: bikes, specifically dirt bikes. But what's been happening, Tyler?
Not a whole lot. Just trying to stay cool here recently.
Yeah, it's been hot. That one,
I mean, yesterday was beautiful.
I hope you got out and rode a little bit. It's beautiful here too.
We didn't get to ride, but we did go to the lake. So
Well, all right, that's good. I got a small ride. I'm still waiting on my itinerary to get back. So we went.
that is unbelievable.
I know that's
That's
ridiculous. I've got a vacation planned when I get back. It's going to be another, not as nice call to Yamaha, USA to the, warranty side of things since, I've already been looking on eBay at used headlight assemblies, I guess off of crash bikes,
well, and
total.
I at one time, of course, this has probably been months ago when I sent you that I looked it up on Rocky Mountain, I think, and they had one available. It showed in stock. I don't know what dealer they pull from or how that works, but it's like you would think that Yamaha um, would at least do an inventory transfer or something from somebody that had it.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask them about. Now, theirs is on backward Rocky Mountain. I've showed somewhere else, maybe Revzilla or somewhere. I saw they showed in stock, but you never know. So I wasn't going
Right.
to pull the trigger on something and then wait just as long. But there are several used on eBay. One was at a reasonable price, a little crack in it, but I mean, not in the headlight, but in the housing. But that's okay if. If I still get the new one when it comes in.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, so I wanted to ask you, uh, you used to do a whole lot of racing. Now your boy's doing a whole lot of racing, and
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he's in what, light double A, light
Well,
A.
he's this year, this next season, he'll be going to double A. Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is he
He's
faster than
doing
you?
good. Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially right now. Now I still get him though. I'm sure he'll watch this at some point. So I've got to rub it in a little bit. Um, if it's very technical, I still got him. If it's a
Okay.
nasty day or there's a lot of, like hard enduro type sections, I still got him on that stuff. But that's just from experience and uh, he'll get there. He hasn't had much interest in practicing a lot of the low speed technical techniques that I've mentioned stuff to him. I've got some tires here at the house that he's maybe crossed two or three times. He doesn't really have that much interest in doing that stuff. He's like, that stuff's not on the track. Well, you're right, but it also benefits. But I did the same thing. I didn't get into that stuff until about 20. I didn't get into the hard enduro type stuff until about 2013 or 14. And I did a class with it was either his first or second trip to the States with Graham Jarvis.
Really? Was that at
And
the Charles Training Center?
yes, yeah. And it was a A to pro group that showed up, and we had and I was on a 510 at the time, so imagine that. Um,
Yeah.
Within the first day, I had already removed my clutch cover and removed two springs out of the clutch from that 510 to give my hand a break. Um, I literally exploded. Got it on video actually. Exploded a coolant reservoir because it was steaming so bad that it couldn't vent fast enough, and it blew up like a bomb.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, we put that 510. I had to rebuild the 510 after riding with Graham. So
What I was reading, it said it had a light flywheel. Did you have a heavier flywheel in there? You
no,
just
I
did a lot of
didn't.
clutch work.
Yeah, but it's also got that bike has a really long stroke. It's almost like an old school big bore. It's so uh, it still had a lot of low end grunt. I mean, it's a 510,
Yeah.
so I mean it had a lot of low end grunt without the heavier flywheel. I never felt the need for it.
Yeah. So did you ever sign up in the amateur class at the TKO?
I have never done the TKO. I have never done it. I've done a few. I can't even remember the names of all of them, but I've done a few hard enduros. I did one at Saddleback, or actually one or two at Saddleback, um, and then up in Kentucky, and then did a couple down in Alabama. One of them was during a tropical depression, and it
Oh,
was a nighttime. It was a nighttime race, and that was brutal.
was that the
But
one at Holly Tree?
it was not at Holly Tree, but it was there close. It was another property um, near Holly Tree. I can't remember the name of the place, but I don't remember what year that was. But Nick Farringer ended up being the one who won that. Him and Quinn Wenzel were there. I
Yeah.
signed up in the pro class. I think there were, I don't know, 13 or 14 pros that signed up. I ended up finishing ninth. I only made one lap. It was a 4 hour race. I could have went out and made another lap, but I didn't think I could complete it by the time limit. So I was like, I'm not going to waste my time to run a second lap. Plus, I was exhausted. I was toast. Um, Nick was feeling his Wheaties. He uh, he ran 4 laps that night.
Holy
Uh,
moly.
yeah, he was, and he didn't even have to run more than two. So because Quinn, I think after the second, it might have been the third, but I think after the second lap, Quinn pulled off the track because he got sick. I don't know if it was something he ate, what the deal was with that, but he was not in a good position to continue riding. And but Nick just was feeling good, I guess, and kept running laps. Not
Yeah.
sure. He, we all do things we that abuse ourselves, but he didn't look like he was having a hard time at all. He was just out there riding. But yeah, that was an impressive night.
Well, if
Landon
it,
was actually with me at that race. He was, I don't know, he might have been, he was on a 100 at the time, but he obviously didn't race, but he was out there on the track. And um, I guess one of his memories from that was that I think Quinn lost his tool bag somewhere. Landon saw it fall off his bike, and
ah,
he was able to go take Quinn his tool bag. So he
that
was
was,
tickled to.
yeah, that's a memory right there, going to help the pros out.
Mhm.
I remember when that race went on and reading about it online.
I
And
think it rained 4 inches that night.
well, that the rock around there. So I've ridden up in the mountains around there, and it gets
Mhm.
the clay and the limestone, it gets so slick.
Yeah, the holly tree is terrible. Holly tree is, I mean, there's areas at Holly Tree that you can't stand on. I mean,
Yeah.
much less ride down. So even with gummies, I mean, you just there's not much you can do about it. You're just along for the ride. Your best bet is to be able to slide to the edge of the bank, to the bank, and without falling. If you can do that, there was at that race, there was a section that was like that, and it was a downhill, thank goodness, and it was just flat slab rock that you're kind of dropping off of, and it was could have been a fairly fast section, but it was nighttime. It was coming to flood, and I remember I had just put titanium pegs on my gas, um, and I dropped the bike, and I swear it slid for 40 feet. I mean, I had to run to it to get to. I mean, it just got a long ways away, and the whole time it's sliding, I could see white sparks coming off the titanium pegs, just
Did you
grinding
grind them
away.
down pretty good?
No, they actually held up pretty good.
All right. Well, good. So, when did you start racing competitively? How old you were a kid then? Because your dad
I've been, yeah,
rode.
my dad was
Yeah.
a racer. He was actually a three-wheeler racer,
Okay. Now
on
that's
250R
ballsy right
three-wheelers.
there.
Yeah, he was 250R three-wheelers, then 250R four-wheelers. And then I think in 89, I don't know if have you ever seen the Fast Old Man video that I've got on YouTube? Um,
I need to go back. Maybe a
him,
long time
him and the
ago.
guy that's in that video in I think 89, they both bought CRs, matching CR 250s, and went to
Hmm.
bikes.
All right.
Um, and he's been on bikes ever since. And then I started riding when I was 3, which was before he started riding dirt bikes. So um, I actually was on quads. I was riding quads at 3, and then I think at 6 or 7, I got on a bike, and then I started racing motocross at 7, and really didn't get into the woods. I mean, we trail rode here at the house and close to home, home
Yeah.
trails. Of course, that was back in the day when farmers really didn't care if you were riding around on their property as long as you didn't mess up their crops. And it was that kind of time, So we rode everywhere around here in the woods, but I never really raced in the woods until I was, I think, 10 or 11. And when I went to my first hare scramble race, that I was hooked.
Yeah, you're
Um,
like, no more tracks.
yeah,
I want to do the woods.
yeah, yeah. So been in the woods ever since.
Now, what were you on when you switched over to the woods? What were you riding? A little 125 or
Oh no, I think I was still on a DS80,
okay.
little DS80. I might have switched to the CR. I think that was kind of, I might have rode the DS80 for a little bit, um, and then very quickly switched over to the CR80.
Yeah.
So I had a CR80 that was, early 90s, and had a CR80, and then went to it was a KDX 200 on a KX 125 frame.
That was a
Um,
popular mod too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of our buddies that we've ridden with for years, and I've known him my whole life. He actually built that bike, and uh, we got that, and I had that bike for years. And then I went from that to a CR 500. So,
That's a
um,
big jump.
yeah. Well, you've met me. I know a lot of people,
Yeah.
but I'm not and which means I was not a small kid either. So,
Yeah.
um, I was riding that um, 125 200 bike at 10 or 11, and
hmm
um, then I was 13 when I switched over to CR 500. But
13 on a
but I
CR
was
500.
but I was 6'1" at 13.
Okay.
Now I was a beanpole. I was skinny, but I was tall, and that was totally by accident. My dad was riding CR 500s at the time, and we had been. I think we were at Loretta Lynn's at a. It was I think it was a Mid South Hare Scramble that was being held at Loretta Lynn's, and I was running at that time. I think I was in C class. I might have been in B, uh, but I was a kid running the adult classes. I didn't there at that time. I don't even remember them being. There might have been, and my dad just didn't put me in them. But I always rode with the grown men. So um, the we were there, and my dad had broke his wrist at an ISDE qualifier a few weeks before.
Mm.
So he was on the bike. He had his CR with him just to ride around the pits. And my KDX, right before we got ready to line up, the top end seized up in it.
Oh gosh.
Um, so he was like, "Well, we're here. You're welcome to ride my bike." And at that time, I was scared to death of the CR 500. Everybody talked about how scary a CR 500 was. Um, and he actually had to crank it on the line for me that day because I couldn't get it started. And he's like, "Just don't kill it, just ride it and don't kill it." And I ended up, I think I won my class that day on that bike, or if I didn't, I did really well, even though I was last off the line. Loretta's was a great place to break in my experience on a CR 500 because those hill climbs, I mean, they were just simple,
hmm
and could make up a lot of time on the hill climbs on the CR. And when I got back, I didn't give him his bike back. He let me ride that one, and he went to an XR 600 at that point because,
Ah,
of
so he
course,
was
that
Scott
was the Scott
Summers.
Summer days. So
Yeah.
everybody thought they could be Scott Summers if they got on, just like everybody thinks they're Poltares if they get on the Tenere.
Uh-huh.
Um, the So he got him an XR 600. I think it was a 94 CR 500, and then rode it a couple of years, and I got a 90. I've had a 94, a 96, a 98, and then my first bike that I bought with my own money was a '01 CR 500. And um, the '01 was definitely my favorite. It had a little heavier flywheel than some of the previous models. I think that 94 or 90, either the 94 or the 96 was just, it was even the lighter flywheels. I don't know. It was ridiculous to ride in the woods. Um, but the '01 had a lot more low end grunt. Um, and I think about it now. People talk about the 500s, and they still, everybody talks about how bad they were, and they are. They're wicked bikes, but they don't put out any more horsepower than my 450 behind me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I guess at the time they were, they were ridiculous because everybody was used to the 250s. And um, I've ridden KX 500s in the woods. I don't like them near as much in the woods. I don't know if it's the power valve setup because, CR 500 doesn't have power valves.
Well,
So
that the KX was more of a desert racing
yeah,
bike.
and it's a long bike, long wheelbase bike.
Yeah.
So in tight woods, it just didn't turn good, and I didn't like the engine. It just it would come on when you weren't expecting. I don't know. I just maybe it was just bike setup. It wasn't my bikes. I was always riding somebody else's, but I never did like those in the woods. I tried them a couple of times, but I always wanted to get back on my CR pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, now I've noticed riding with you, you like to run it lower in the RPMs and use the torque and the grunt on the bigger bikes. And so I
Yeah,
bet
I've
that really
always been a
suited
big
you.
bore bike guy.
Yeah. And that's I'm sure that suited your riding style.
Yeah, I try to conserve energy. I'm out of shape now, especially so. Um, Anything I can do to conserve energy, that's what I'm going to do.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you rode a CR for a long time then.
I
That was a
rode a
good.
CR until from the time I was 13 till I was 22.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And then what
And
did you switch to? Was that when you went to the T510?
nope, I actually went to a Husky WR 360.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
I still wanted to stick with a big bore two stroke, and I had literally wore my 500 out. I mean, the wheels were wore out on it. I mean, the bike was, it was time for another bike. And of course, they didn't make the CR 500s anymore. And I got an '02, I think it was an '02 WR 360 Husky.
There were
And
not a lot of Huskies then in the US. Not a lot of people riding them, were there?
well, that was back in the Kajiva days.
Mm-hmm.
That was when Kajiva owned Husky. You didn't see many of them, but that was a really good bike. That WR 360, if some people said they were hard to crank. I came off of the CR 500. The WR 360 didn't feel like it was hard to crank, but I know why. The 360 basically had the same Kickstarter length of a 250.
Mm.
Um, and they were hard to crank. But if you did kind of a sequence like I did on the CR 500, you push through top dead center, bring it back to the top and kick it, get it past the compression, and get it on the downstroke and kick it, it would always start right up. So you couldn't just jump up and throw your leg over it and drop your foot on it and crank it like you would a 250 or 125. You did have to sit there and just take your time, do the sequence, because you're going to waste more time and energy trying to just kick, kick, kick and not get a good stroke versus just take your time, do the sequence, and start it. And that's the way the CR 500 was too. Um, and I never had any issues with them. Really enjoyed that WR. Um, the suspension after coming off the CR, the suspension was phenomenal on that Husky. I think that generation had it had Öhlins shock, and I think it was I,
Sacks?
I think it was Sachs front forks,
Yeah.
but
Early.
they were very it was a very good suspension, and it was a woods built bike. That's what
Yeah.
it was built for. And I rode it for several years, or a couple of years at least. And I kind of got the itch to try a four stroke. I've never been on a four stroke other than, a four wheeler. I'd never ridden the dirt bike on a four stroke. And in '05, I bought a brand new, I straight out of the box, 510. Um, and uh, that was probably it's arguably my all-time favorite bike because I literally rode that same bike, did not change bikes, rode that exact bike for 11 years. um I put close to 500 hours on it, or right at 500 hours, and it was needing, and I made one valve adjustment in that 500 hours, and then the second valve adjustment, it needed valves. So um I tore it down. I put intake valves in it, did not change the exhaust valves, put intake valves in it because that's the only thing that needed it. And while I was there and tore down, I thought, well, I'm at least going to throw some rings in it. I almost put a piston in it, but I bought I just bought rings because the piston, I still had hatch marks in the cylinder. The piston didn't have any kind of scoring or anything on it. And um, I ended up putting a set of rings and intake valves in that bike and a timing chain, I think. And that's all I put in it. And then I rode it for another 500 hours before I sold
Wow.
it. And then I sold it and got another 510 Husky '05 model that I had found in Kentucky that only had about an hour and a half worth of ride time on it. A guy had, it was the exact same bike as mine. That's how much I liked that bike. I was willing,
Yeah.
even though it was 10 years old, I was willing to go stick with a 10-year-old bike. I just found one that only had a couple hours on it.
Well, you knew that bike very well by then.
Yeah, and all the accessories and add-ons, my suspension that had been modified, everything that I needed, I just swapped off my old bike and put on this bike. Um, and because the suspension was still fresh. I mean, yeah, I had 5 hours, 500 hours on it, but it had been taken care of and rebuilt and new bushings and things like that. Um, anyway, ran across this guy that he had bought him and his son a bike. I think he had bought like a little TTR or something for his son. And he got him that Husky 510, and they rode them just a few times. His son lost interest and they parked them.
Yeah.
And I ran across that bike. It still had the new bike shine on the plastic. I mean, the thing looked brand new. And I put that new plastic on my old bike and put my old wore out plastic on the new bike, and swapped all my stuff over and sold my old bike to a guy down, I think he was down in Georgia somewhere, and he ended up super motarding uh, my 510, my first 510. And I don't know how many hours he put on it, but I did see it pop up for sale like a year or two later. And I knew it was my bike. And
Yeah.
and I was like, I wondered. I never messaged him, but I was like, I wonder if he ever rebuilt that bike because that thing's got a lot of hours on it. And then my second 510 was when I had only had it maybe a year or so, and went and did the Jarvis training.
Hmm.
And when I got back, I had to put a crank and all that because I cooked that bike. I mean, doing the stuff we were doing, the guy that was parked next to me when we were camping, I just slept in my vehicle. The guy parked next to me slept in his trailer, and it was in April and it was a beautiful weather outside, so we just camped. And the whole weekend, he thought I was riding a 250 four-stroke, and we got ready to load up and leave, and we were just talking about the weekend. He said, "Man, I've never noticed. I didn't notice, but never seen a 250 that had um, two exhaust ports on it." And I said, "Oh, that's not a 250." He said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "It's a 510." He said, "You've been riding that damn thing all weekend?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." So Jarvis kept referring to me as the big guy on the big Husky. uh, but uh, but we had a good time, and that was my introduction into hard enduro. And there was stuff we were doing there that, um, in the past, I would never even look at it before. I wouldn't give it a second thought. I wouldn't even consider looking at something and going, "Oh, I can ride up that." Um, but after that weekend, I started looking for things. It's like, hey,
Ah.
it gave me confidence. That's doable. We can do that. And then that's when I switched over back to a two-stroke, because I thought I'm gonna dabble in some of this hard enduro stuff. And I got yeah, I think that was my next bike, was a gas. Um,
The pre KTM gas.
yes, it was an 18 model.
Hmm.
Um, and that I had always liked gas bikes for a long time, and I had eyeballed them. But the problem with them was they were so heavy. The old twin spar, like the
Were they?
2010, 2009, 13, that generation, they were, or even newer, the 14s. Um, yeah, so like that generation, say a 13 model gas. Oh no, I did not switch to the gas at that point. I had a 13 WR 300 Husky.
Oh, okay.
That's what I switched to. But back to the gas talk, the gases were always nice, and I thought their suspension was great and their engines were great. But the bike, so like a 13 model gas weighs as much as an XR 400,
Oh, yeah.
and that's just a lot of weight for a 302 stroke. Um, should not be that heavy, but they used, I believe it was a chromoly twin spar, so it's just a heavy frame. There's a lot of metal in that frame, and anyway, so my after I sold that last 510, I went to a Husky um, WR 300. It was the next closest thing because I really enjoyed that 360 I had. I thought, well, I'll check out this 300. It didn't have e-start, but it's a 302 stroke. It starts easy anyway.
Yeah.
Um, really enjoyed that bike too, and just kind of dabbled in some of the hard enduro stuff with that, and um, quickly found out that I wish I had an e-start. You get in predicaments where you just can't really. You're in a area that's you can't put a foot down to make a kick. It's just a hard spot, and
Yeah.
so I sold it and got the gas. That's when I switched to the gas. That was in 28. That was an 18 model. Actually, I got it in 19, I think. It was an 18 model, but um, it was a bike that I got it down at Donnie Graham's down in Senatobia, Mississippi. And I called him up and just asked if he had any or if he knew of any. He goes, no, but let me put you in touch with a guy who bought one from me a few weeks ago. I think he's wanting to sell it. It's like, okay, you know. So he did. And we ended up making a deal, and I got that gas, and I really enjoyed that bike. That was the first year of that platform, and they had some e-start issues. They also had crank bearing issue, which I have a friend in Nashville that. So there's a video on my YouTube from a Natra buddy race that
Hmm.
me and Landon were racing. It was actually his first race, and he was on a KX 100, and I did the start, and we're going to come through and switch. And during that first lap, towards the end of it, I could hear my crank bearing whining.
Uh,
Um, you can hear it in the camera even. And I pulled in and said, "Hey, Landon, my engine's gone. I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, you're out there on your own now." So he takes off, and a buddy of mine that was there working the race said, "Hey, my bike is over there. If you want to ride, since you're here with Landon, just ride my bike." I kind of felt nervous about that because he had literally just rebuilt this YZ250 from the ground up. I mean, it was pristine. I was like, "Are you sure about this?" um, but he let me do it, and I just took it easy on his bike. I didn't ride too hard, and we finished the race. We did fine, and took it home. And the crank bearing on that bike, it's like it's like a poly bearing, almost plastic, I guess, plastic,
hmm.
high temp plastic bearing on one side, but then they had on the other was still a standard steel bearing, ball bearing.
Odd.
And
Very odd.
I don't know why they would do that. But that same engine was basically used in the previous generations, and it wasn't like that. It's like when they changed, they wanted to either cut some weight or cost. I don't know, but that bearing failed, and it was only 80 hours, and it needed crank bearing. And the I went back. I just went to the local hardware store and bought, a Timken steel bearing to put back in it. I did not go back with that plastic bearing. Um, and that day at that race, when I came in, a guy that was on the line waiting for his buddy to come in heard me talking about it. And since then, we've actually become friends. We've raced the 24-hour together.
Hmm.
We've ridden together in several places. We've become friends. And but what connected us was he goes, "I have about 80 hours on my gas, and last week that same bearing went out on mine." And then you start digging in, and there's more people that around that 80 to 100 hour mark, that crank bearing would fail. Um, and he did the same thing. He went back with like a Timken steel bearing. And I think since then, resolved all their bearing. I think they
Yeah,
resolved the
because
bearing
that's that
issue.
same platform.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they resolved the bearing issue, and they resolved the e-start issue. The problem with the e-start is that sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't. I I changed. I did everything they asked. Gas said this is what you need to do to fix your e-start problem. It never resolved the issue. Some people I think had some good luck, but again, it was a 302 stroke. It was easy to kick. Most of the time, it would start with E-start, but sometimes it wouldn't. So I didn't worry with it too much. And then I think in 19 they may have fixed it on the 19 models, and then of course at the end of 19 they transitioned over to the KTM platform.
Yeah.
But
You're talking about hard enduro and getting in some predicaments where it's hard to kick. And I've been watching all of Cody Webb's races this year on the
on the
YZ too.
YZ, yeah,
Yeah, and he's had some interesting solutions to kicking it in when
yeah.
he's in a
Well,
predicament.
when you can balance a bike as good as he can, you can do that stuff.
Yeah, but that's there's been some change ups going on, so that's really been interesting. The YZ, and it's even had me looking at the bikes online, like,
I'm telling you, I've said for years, if Yamaha would come out with a YZ300 with a hydraulic clutch, Woods valve suspension, and an 18-inch rear wheel, and an E-start, I believe I believe they would take over the Woods market.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
because
the
it's a
X
great
has
bike.
18. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but they it's a
E-start.
great bike. And there's a ton of YZ250s out there that do great in the woods and hare scrambles and stuff. And I mean, but your racers may like the YZ250s, but your normal trail guys, your average guys, they would really like a 302 stroke and a hydraulic clutch, and all the things that a Euro bike would have. And
Yeah,
they may be starting to come up with something like that, maybe
yeah.
because
Well, on my old WR, I can when those two fingers are on that clutch, I feel that cable. I mean, it's a
oh,
heavy pull.
Landon at the end of his season last year, he never complains. He just rides.
He's on the
And
FX, isn't he? The 250 FX.
he's on a CRF. That's his
Oh,
bike over this
CRF.
shoulder.
Okay.
CRF 250. Um, but I got his bike. I forgot what I'd done to. I'd done something to it, and he wasn't here, so I was going to ride it around the yard and check things out. And I was like, "Has he been riding with this clutch like this?" Um, and it's a cable clutch,
Yeah.
and um, it turned out, it was just the cable was not fraying or anything like that, and we lubed it. We do this, but it was just dragging, and the lever too. So I replaced the lever and cable, and I said something to him about it, and he got on it the next time and rode it. He's like, "Oh man, that's night and day difference." Like, yeah, what? And I guess it just gradually gets worse, so you get used to it. You don't really notice it, but when I got on it, I was like, "There's something wrong here." But he wouldn't. He never said a word about it. But I ended up just this year for him. Um, he he's riding hard for one thing. I mean, he's in the rev limiter on that 250 a
Yeah.
lot. He could really use it. Would benefit him to go with a bigger bike in a way, but I don't think he's got the body mass to handle much. I think he would wear out faster on a heavier bike, bigger bike. So he wanted to stick with the 250 again. But this past year, normally we'll have 2 or 3 mud races. And when I say mud races, I don't mean you get a little muddy. I mean like foot peg dragging, get
Mm.
your bike stuck where you have to have a four-wheeler pull you out kind of mud races. This year, I think we ran a dozen races, and out of those dozen races, 10 of them, including this last year, I guess, including the 24-hour, were just sloppy mud races.
Yeah, I
Uh,
bet.
and that bike has taken a beating. I ended up rebuilding everything. I put a new crank. I think he got it hot at some point, and he's only got 80 or 90 hours on it, and I've already put a crank in it. But I think a lot of that is just due to the conditions he was putting it through. And I put a piston in it at 50 hours, not because it needed it, but we were hearing a tick or a knock, and I thought it was piston slap. Once I got the engine apart, I realized the wrist pin had scored to the upper rod, and
Oh,
so it had gotten hot. And in that bike, there's no bearings. It's all just machine surfaces. So if that rod gets ruined, it's time to pull the crank out. But it
yeah.
was one of those weeks that we had a race one weekend, and then the next weekend had another race. It was a makeup race from weather and stuff. And he was where he was in the points. If he missed one of those races, he had a chance of losing his overall position for the season. So I just slapped it back together with a piston. I got in there with an emery cloth and I stuck it on the end of a drill and polished it as good as I could. Put a new piston and wrist pin in it, and it actually was quiet. He made it through that race and did fine. And then we did a West Point trip, and um, he we got about halfway through that ride, maybe 2 hours into the day, and he started hearing it again. I was like, "Yeah, just take it to the truck. We'll tear it down when we get home." So at that point, the season was over, so we had time to do what we needed to do with it. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the good thing is the cranks. I mean, you can get a crank for that bike for under $400. I
That's,
mean, and
well,
that's a
that's,
rod.
yeah.
That's a rod complete crank. It's so that's not bad, and
Mm-mm,
teardown's pretty
mm-mm.
easy on it. So
Well, so yeah, y'all are all Honda. Well, of course, you got your Tenere, so that's Yamaha,
I
but
got the Tenere.
yeah,
I've got that old KTM back there that I've not done anything with in a while. It's a '01 300, and then I've actually got one of my old bikes back here. It's actually not mine anymore, but it's here because he's wanting me to rebuild the forks on it. It's my old X. You remember it? My XR 400.
no,
You might
do
not
I?
remember. You might
No.
not remember that bike. It was my. I built it for a dual sport. That's what got me into dual sports.
Okay,
Is
the
that
XR is a
that
great.
XR that's back there?
Okay, now the 400 is a dual sport, is a great bike.
It was, except after about 80 miles, I found out I did not have an iron butt because,
Yeah,
I mean, that bike after 80 miles, I was ready to get off of it. And that's what got me looking for the KLR, or
that
something
yeah,
different. But I landed on the KLR. I was like, I need something that I can do. No, because I was riding with guys that were doing 150-mile days.
yeah.
It wasn't extreme difficulty, but it was just long days. And after 70, 80 miles on that XR, I was like, okay, I've got to call it a day. I was toast.
We got a super comfy seat on that Tenere now. You can put some
Yes, I
miles
do.
in.
Yeah, that thing's very nice. It's more comfortable than my seat concepts.
No, I
And
loved it when I had it on there. I mean, big. I did not shy away from an all day, 250 slab to the where I was riding, and then another couple hundred miles and 250 back. I didn't shy away. But you're a lot taller than I am, and I just,
it's definitely
it's
tall.
tall.
I'm 6'6", and I'm on my toes. If I pull up to a red light and put both feet down, I'm up on my toes a little bit.
So I'm 5'9" on a good day, and it was tippy toe on one side. I was like, I just can't quite do this. So, and I would only use it. And that was the thing. It's like, if I knew I was getting off pavement, I wouldn't take it. I'd switch to the stock seat. And that kind of defeats the purpose because it's like, usually I'm going to have some off pavement stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I was worried when we met that day, and we were riding and swapping. I was kind of concerned. I told you, I said, we'll ride it, but I'm a little worried because it's a little wider than the seat
Yeah, it is
concepts.
water.
Um, and I was worried off road, true off road, single track, like we were doing that day. I was worried it would get in my way, but it hasn't. It's been great.
Well,
So,
that's
and I
good.
mean,
I mean,
I rode it. I rode it at Loretta Lynn's. I've done the single track at Loretta Lynn's, the main. Um, and I can keep a good pace on it with that. It doesn't get in my way, and I'm shifting weight constantly on that bike, and I was worried I couldn't shift my weight back far enough. I figured it would catch like the back of my calves, but or the back of my legs when I tried to shift weight, or make me spread my legs to get that weight shifted. But uh, I've honestly not even really noticed it in my way.
Well, the guy that I got that from had sold his Tenere and just sold it to stock seats. They had it left over, but he was taller and he had it custom made for him, out in East Tennessee. But I was contemplating. Of course, I don't have a Tenere right now. But I was contemplating selling it to somebody who was taller, anyways. That was looking for, and then getting something from Seat Concept. So that worked out. So. Now tell me about your 450 back there. When did you decide to go back to the Honda?
Well, the issue with hard enduro is where I'm at, there's really nowhere to ride it. So
Yeah.
I'm traveling 3 and 4 hours to go practice even. I just, there's nowhere to go. Um, I'm in West Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
where we're in a very low elevation, mostly rural farm country, flat. If you get up in Northwest Tennessee, you get up close to the river, you'll get into some of the bluffs. If you're lucky enough to get some riding areas up there in the Mississippi River Bluff, you got some elevation. um, Over by the Tennessee River, you got a little bit more stuff to ride if you can find something. But for the most part, I was traveling to East Tennessee or
Mm.
Kentucky, Central Kentucky. If I was wanting to ride hard enduro, that's what I had to do, or go into Arkansas or Missouri in the Ozarks. You had to travel so far to get any time on it. So I found myself, I had my gas set up for hard enduro, the suspension and everything. And I found myself ended up, that's when Hunter, my oldest son, was still riding. And he was racing the National Enduro Series, and I would go with him. And sometimes my dad would race too. So we had three generations out there racing. And I was out there riding National Enduros on my hard enduro bike because
Yeah.
and I finally was like, I think I'm ready to go back to something to set back up for hare scramble and that type of riding, like we do at West Point,
Yeah.
stuff we do here at home, because that's what we ride mostly. And the hard enduro stuff was fun. I did an event up in West Virginia that was a blast. I really enjoyed it, and I liked the challenge. I wish I could afford to have a bike set up for that and a bike set up for enduro, and do both. But that's especially with Landon racing. There's I don't even get to ride much anymore. I've got my bikes. At this point, it's almost 5 years old, and I've only got 130 hours on it, which 20 years ago I was putting 200 hours a year on a bike, and
Yeah.
so
Well, life gets busy, especially with family.
yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you in the hard dirt? So we've had a lot of changes. We talked about Cody Webb, on the YZ 250, but Triumph, what's his name? Johnny Walker's on the
Mhm.
254 stroke. That's
And he
interesting.
completed
And doing,
Erzberg on it.
yes, he
Completed
did.
and podiumed Erzberg, didn't he?
Yes, I
Or did he
heard
just
they had
complete it?
to gear. I mean, put a tiny little front sprocket on there, gear it way down. But that's impressive because that's
Yeah.
way down in the
And I never
horsepower.
saw it steaming. I never saw it getting hot
Mm-mm.
anywhere. So they've done some good work on that, and that was impressive. But it's I think it's definitely doable on a four stroke if it's set up properly.
Yeah.
Um, but you just the problem with a four stroke, if it overheats, you can cause a whole lot more problems than a two stroke getting a little hot.
Yeah.
Generally a two stroke gets hot, you give it a few seconds and it cool back down, pretty quickly. Just the four strokes just generate so much more heat,
Yeah.
and it's hot on the rider too. You feel that heat coming off of it. But I love them both. I see all these debates about two stroke versus four stroke, even hare scramble. Russell Bobbitt, after he retired, came out and won a national enduro overall on a 150 two stroke. So he was retired. He's on the bike that everybody says, "Oh, you can't. That's not competitive in national enduro," and he smoked everybody. I mean, it's the bikes. It You do have to ride them a little differently. I think you can get on the four stroke. You can get a little lazy on a four stroke, especially a big four stroke. You can get a little lazy on a big four stroke, um, versus the two stroke. You tend to be having to work it a little bit more. Um, and I don't know. I love them both, and I've actually contemplated switching back to a two stroke and continue to ride what I'm doing because I enjoy them both.
Yeah.
I'd never been on a four stroke until I got to my 510, and and part of the reason why I went back to it is it lasts forever. Or at least my 510 did. I don't think this Honda's going to, but they're just built different.
Yeah.
Of course, that Honda is also significantly lighter. than the 510 was. So
I bet it was. So I was looking online, and of course, I'm sure this is dry weight, and it was saying something around like 256.
on
You
the
know,
510,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then you add your gas.
The European bikes generally will do dry weight,
Yeah,
where the Japanese bikes usually post curb weight.
yeah. So then you add your oil, your coolant, your gas.
Yeah,
What about 280, 290, something like that?
it maybe
Maybe
it may not have been
270.
that heavy, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
where I think the curb weight on the Honda is under 250. So
yeah, yeah. So your son is racing. What series is he going to be in this year? Is it the Warren?
he'll probably be doing Warren again. We've talked about it. So he's graduated this year, and it's one of those things where it's time to kind of start growing up. Like
Yeah, yeah,
he's going to be working, uh, and he's going to have to help Dad out a little bit if he's going to continue racing. And we'd like to. I'd love to get his name further out there. I'd like to give him an opportunity to move even higher up in the ranks, and
yeah,
possibly get some kind of help out of it. But in order to do that, you're not going to really get that running what I would call a local series, which would be Warren, Mid South, Sika, or you you're really going to have to run like a GNCC. I mean, that's where GNCC is going to be where you're going to get your name out, and
yeah,
that's going to require significantly more funding, significantly more travel. Um, so we talked about maybe this year continuing with Warren, and then maybe hit a couple of the GNCCs just to get a feel for it, and then see what he wants to do for the next round. But um, anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just GNCC is not like it used to be either. So when I raced GNCC, I didn't race a whole lot of them, but the ones that I did race, they were good, tight, single track, or fairly tight. I mean, it wasn't like they are now. Now they are some high speed races.
yeah. I
Uh,
watched some of that, and they are flying.
yeah, they're a lot more. I mean, you can basically look at it like a skid loader trail. Um,
Hmm.
so it's a little different, and that kind of makes me nervous because I mean, that's when you're running pace, when you're running 40 mile an hour in the trees, that's when you can get hurt.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know, I like to keep it. If I can keep it below 20, I'm good. That's in the trees, in the trees. But I mean, that's fast. I mean, that's
yeah,
if you're 15 to 18 mile an hour, you're moving pretty good in the tree in a tight wood section. Um, but at GNCC, you're looking, them guys are hitting 30 and 40 mile an hour in the trees, and
hmm.
it's just in certain sections. They do have the areas that they do tighten up, but they're just a lot different than they used to be.
Now, do y'all have interest in doing the Perry Mountain 24 again?
Well, we didn't do it this past time. We got a Colorado trip. My biggest problem with me is funding.
Yeah,
It's a lot. I got a family of six. Um,
you got a
and
house full.
yeah, so it's just, it's a single income family, for the most part. April does some, she does work she does like the social media, um, planning, reception. She answers the phone calls, does the scheduling for a clinic out here in Jackson. But for the most part, it's pretty much single income. So it's tough.
Yeah.
We could probably have a lot better life if it wasn't for motorcycles. Um,
Well, but
so, but I mean, it's what you see. That you see memes all the time, like, well, your kid will never get into drugs if you get him on motorcycles because he's not going to have money to buy drugs, and that's the way it is. It's of course, I guess there's more expensive hobbies. I've always heard golf was probably more expensive than bikes.
it's all so I got my grandson that little this little 150cc pit bike that I'm gonna let him grow into, but of course, then you have to buy everything else. You got to buy the boots, the gear,
Yeah. And
So
never sell your gear. If you sell your bike, never sell your gear.
yeah. So, anyways, I've got him the boots now. I've got him a roost, you know, roost guard and chest protector. Got his knee pads and shin guards and the boots, and so. I hadn't got him the jersey or that he's going to wear the blue jeans for now. He's going to do it the old school way, but that will come once maybe next season when
Yeah, I
he's
always
ready
tell
to do some riding.
everybody when they're getting into it, priority number one, of course, is a helmet. Number
Yep.
two is boots.
Yeah.
Everything else you can fill in as you go, but
Yep.
definitely helmet and boots.
Yeah. And I got the helmet for him. I always have had extra helmets laying around,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so I'm like, oh, I can just see the dollar signs, but that'll be fun. I hope I can get him out there, riding with me here soon.
But man, if
Um,
he ever gets into racing, woof, let me tell you. I
well,
mean,
I'm hoping we get to that, but I don't know if his mother will allow him to do
man,
that.
it's just between entry fees, gate fees,
Yeah, yeah.
it all adds up and it adds up quick. Then travel expenses and repairs on the bike.
Well,
Of
yeah.
course,
I'll
my
take.
thing is we're gonna ride. We generally ride, even if we're not racing, we're gonna ride that much anyway.
Mhm.
So the repairs on the bike, it's kind of irrelevant to me because it's gonna happen. I mean, it's um, we're gonna put that kind of time on the bikes whether we're racing or not because we like to ride, and it doesn't. I have nothing to prove. I could care less about racing. When I go race, I don't. If you've seen any of my videos when I'm racing, I'll laugh occasionally or I don't know. I'm just having a good time. I'm not out there trying to win anything. I'm not going to go out there and break myself up for a $5 plaque that I paid $65 for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
um,
it is about laughing. The most fun, and I remember this when I was out racing the, Vegas to Reno, and I was out there, out in the desert, and I remember just hooting and hollering my helmet, just laughing, having a blast. Of course, that was a
yeah.
lot different out there in the wide open
Oh
desert,
yeah,
going through the canyons and everything, because it was all two-track road, it's all desert road,
yeah. I've never
and
ridden out in desert.
yeah, and so you can see, way out in the distance, so you know what's coming up. And for, not that it's any different on the roads, but around here, if you're on two track, there's trees, so you're kind of nervous, and then you can't see the ravines and all that. But wide open, you just kind of slide side to side, it's that. But of course, it gets a little bit scary. You'd be wide open and all of a sudden the road disappears below you, because there's no
Yeah,
shadows in the middle of the day,
nope.
and you cannot see the washouts. And so you're doing 65, 75 miles an hour,
And
it,
then you just drop.
yeah, you got about a 5, 6 foot drop, and you're like, oh God, so and then you have to watch out for stray animals like donkeys running across the road. I saw some donkeys, coming. I was like, just stay down there. Don't come out in the middle of the road.
Yeah,
But it is fun getting out there and
yeah. And
doing
and
all
I
that.
don't care who I ride with. You hear people all the time. They'll mention they want to come ride, but they're like, I don't want to hold you up. I don't want to do this, or I don't care. I just enjoy riding. I'll ride whatever pace you want to ride, and I just enjoy riding.
We were talking about this when we were out last time is, some days you just have the good days, some days you have bad days out riding. And I went out this weekend, I went out Friday and I was feeling good and just start off, and I just knew it was going to be a good riding day. And I got a rock or something on the first good hill climb on the Ironman loop. Something got in there, knocked all the teeth off my front sprocket.
Oh wow.
Never had that happen before. Never
Well,
had that happen.
I know that day that me and you met down there, and I told you before we ever really got going, I was like, I hope this is not a sign of how my day's going to go. Because
Well, yeah,
I took off, you were still getting ready, and I thought, well, I was wanting to check how my air pressure felt. And I dropped off in that trail right behind us, and I didn't go 100 yards and busted my butt. And I got back up, came back to the truck, went to go out again. My kickstand spring broke. Uh,
yeah.
so we had to spend time to work on the kickstand. I was like, it was hot, humid that day, and here I am
Oh,
already drenched. And I hadn't even started riding yet because I was out in the middle of a parking lot trying to take my kickstand off. And
that heat takes it right out of you, just sucks the energy. And when I
yeah,
did my Superman impression on that uh, later on. That just sapped all my strength, you know. But
Yep,
anyways, it was good. Any day out riding, even if it's a bad day of riding, is better than being at
absolutely.
work. So.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're getting at about the hour mark, and I've enjoyed sitting here talking bikes with you. So,
Yeah, me too.
anyway, I
This is
appreciate
a
it.
first for me for sure. I've never done anything like this, so
Oh, well, it's easy, right? We just sit here and talk bikes. That's what
I
it's
can do
about.
that. I can do that.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being here. So we'll see you next time.
All right.